No matter which way you look at it, the Zodiac case is filled with crazy events, speculation, and a multitude of suspects. If you thought it couldn't get crazier, you're in for a surprise. Welcome to Bad Things' craziest Reddit Zodiac theories. The Zodiac case, filled with cryptograms, letters taunting the press and police, costumes, and volumes of suspects, lends itself to some crazy theories as to who the killer was and why he committed the crimes he did. There are many specialized discussion boards on the internet, but if you want a one-stop shop, Reddit is hard to beat. The site provides news, discussion, answers, and entertainment on almost any topic imaginable. Reddit claims to be the front page of the internet, but over the past 15 years, it has proven to be just that. Its users can notice trends and news before anybody else and then remark on them, sometimes with exceptional wit or insightful knowledge. Reddit is also known for its thousands of true crime and conspiracy theory subreddits. As you might suspect, these two subjects can overlap in some instances, and none more so than in the Zodiac case. Our first crazy and, let's admit it, totally ridiculous theory is that Ted Cruz is the Zodiac. Although anyone with basic knowledge of the Zodiac case knows how preposterous this theory is, and how it's meant to be a satirical take on Cruz's politics, from time to time, confusion creeps in with some Reddit users. I heard something about Ted Cruz being the Zodiac Killer despite being part of the Senate, but I can't find the word killer in his Wikipedia page, only him being called a Nazi or Lucifer. What is the relation between the two? Why are people saying Ted Cruz is the Zodiac Killer? By now, everyone knows that this was a meme that went rogue, but how did this ridiculous theory start? On March 14, 2013, the Twitter feed @RedPillAmerica posted a tweet claiming that an upcoming Cruz speech would be titled, "This is the Zodiac Speaking." The internet, as it does, latched onto this meme, and the tweets, posts, and memes started flying. On November 10, 2014, Twitter user @Flash2844 tweeted that Cruz's deathbed confession would be, "I am the Zodiac Killer," along with the hashtag, "Ted Cruz is the Zodiac Killer." A Facebook page named Ted Cruz is the Zodiac Killer was created on December 15, 2015, and received over 9,400 likes over the following 2 months. On January 20, 2016, @Linzetta on Twitter posted a fabricated quotation of Cruz admitting to be the Zodiac Killer. That same evening, @Zeppo Wilbury tweeted that Cruz was born in Calgary, Canada, and that the Zodiac Killer's first victims were called Cal and Gary. In 2016, while Cruz was running to become the next president of the United States, the meme took off and started going viral. National Public Radio reported in 2016 that most meme participants understood Cruz is not the Zodiac Killer. The piece read, "But they say it's all about a feeling they have about Cruz. They think he's creepy, and they want to emphasize this as plainly as possible." Occasionally, the uninitiated new Redditors pop up in some subreddits asking if there could be any truth to the theory. The easiest way to debunk this theory: Rafael Edward Cruz was born on December 22, 1970. Robert Graysmith is the Zodiac Killer. What better way to deflect blame than write a whole book about investigating the case? It also gave him even more fame for his killings, which is what many serial killers want. This Redditor theory is that one of the supposed pivotal characters in the Zodiac case was the infamous killer. Robert Graysmith worked as a political cartoonist for the San Francisco Chronicle in 1969, when the Zodiac murders investigation garnered public notoriety. He tried to decipher the killer's cryptic letters and continued to be obsessed with the case for decades. Graysmith published 2 books about the case, and his 1986 book Zodiac served as the basis for David Fincher's 2007 film of the same name. He later abandoned his cartoonist career to write 5 more books about high-profile crimes. One Redditor, Remarkable Republican, has, according to himself, conducted intensive research on why he thinks Graysmith was the Zodiac Killer. Remarkable Republican gave 12 reasons why he thought Graysmith was the Zodiac, but we will only show you the most ridiculous. Graysmith was 26 years old in 1968 and had the requisite skills and intelligence to be the Zodiac. As a cartoonist, he had a real feel for how to disguise himself and how to influence what people saw when they looked at him. A relatively slim man, Graysmith wore glasses and bulky clothes when he was in character as Zodiac. His Zodiac character is different than him in appearance, and he probably also altered his voice when he was in character. Due to his work at the paper and his background in cartoons, he was a skilled cryptographer. The weak solution that he offered to the public was an obvious ploy to make himself look like he was incapable of producing such an intricate code. Graysmith's long-term plan was to become a famous true crime writer, and the only way to really be qualified for that work is to either have a background in law enforcement or be a criminal. Being a criminal is easier, especially when you're a sociopath. Graysmith was a sociopath who could kill without empathy. He did not have an insatiable drive, which enabled him to strike strategically. For Graysmith, his eyes remained fixed on the true prize, his true crime-writing career. Obviously an egomaniac, Graysmith wanted some credit, but he couldn't get the full credit. Writing the book on Zodiac, Graysmith has made sure that his name always pops up when the Zodiac is mentioned. It is like getting the kind of credit that BTK or Manson has, without the threat of what might happen if he were to drop the soap. Like most serial killers, Graysmith is a man of little to no character. He has grown rich by smearing the names of men like Arthur Lee Allen. Graysmith's interviews and books clearly show that he has no love of country or regard for the public good. This may sound like a weird complaint given the nature of his crimes as the Zodiac, but there were some killers who had an upside. BTK served his community, raised his children to be good Christians, was active in local politics, and he was loyal to the United States of America. When making bold statements like these on Reddit, you know one thing for sure: you need to get your thick skin out for the backlash and sarcasm coming your way. Emma_non hit back by saying, "Effort, 1 out of 10, 1 for making a video. Originality, 0 out of 10. Trolling, 10 out of 10. Humor, 1 out of 10. Overcurious Duff added, "Mods, can we get a cray-cray alert when posts such as this appear?" Although these two examples are wacky, there are multiple theories on Reddit that are posted with no proof or explanation as to why they may be true. Some of these include: the Zodiac murders were perpetrated by a group of 4 people. The Zodiac Killer is actually a hoax. Zodiac was D.B. Cooper. Ted Kaczynski was the Zodiac Killer. Donald Harden, the man who solved the 408 cipher, was the Zodiac. Dave Toschi, inspector in the case, was the Zodiac. After scouring Reddit, Bad Things has found what we think is one of the craziest of the crazy. Some dude, 224, stirred up a hornet's nest with his theory that none other than Brian Hartnell was the Zodiac. On September 27, 1969, college students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were soaking up the sun on the shores of Lake Berryessa, some 30 miles north of Napa, California. A man suddenly appeared, wielding a gun and wearing a hooded outfit, with a white crossed circle embroidered across his chest. The stranger bound their wrists with pre-cut lengths of plastic clothesline after explaining that he had escaped from prison and needed money and a car to get to Mexico. Without warning, he plunged a large knife into Brian's back 6 times. He then stabbed Cecilia 10 times. Cecilia died 2 days later, and Brian survived. Some dude 224 admits that, "I haven't looked too far into it, but posted the theory anyway." What if Brian Hartnell is the Zodiac Killer? This is all coincidental, but here's what I got. Brian Hartnell looks strikingly similar to the police sketch, one of the only survivors of the Zodiac Killer. The only other person to see the Zodiac Killer and live to tell about it was Mike Mageau and possibly Kathleen Johns. One's idea of the killer is essentially useless due to a 20-year difference in crime and ID, and the other ID'd the composite sketch that looks very similar to Brian Hartnell. Cecilia would be the only person to see the Zodiac Killer in broad daylight with a very clear view of his appearance. However, she died. Point 4 is seemingly moot because the killer is masked, correct? Well, isn't it just a happy coincidence that the Zodiac just happens to decide to wear his elaborate costume that no one was intended to ever see, given it was supposed to be a double homicide, on the day that he not only runs into the victim that looks suspiciously like him, but also manages to accidentally not kill him? Though he does make sure that Cecilia is killed. The only way of figuring out what happened in the Berryessa attack is the only surviving member of the event's word, this being Brian Hartnell. Brian describes himself in the transcript as being calm and rational, even to the point of feigning death. Very calculated and not too humble. We've seen that in his letters, the Zodiac Killer is also very boastful and prideful. As previously stated, it's very good foreshadowing on the Zodiac's part to wear his elaborate costume, despite planning to kill the only people who will see it. So why bother? It also seems extremely unlucky that Brian, who after being attacked in broad daylight and conversing with the killer, would only see him in an elaborate costume. I haven't investigated the timeline yet, but he is 19 during the first murders. Sort of young, but he looks very distinguished and formal for his years. Easily mistakable for a 25 to 35-year-old man. How could he have done it? Easy. Takes this girl out for a picnic, ties her up, fakes a robbery scene, stabs her to death, writes the message on the car. Well, what now? He makes the phone call to the police, which was described as a young man. Well, damn, he's a young man. Wild. He goes back to the scene, stabs himself, but not bad enough to actually hurt himself. Question: why? Answer: to clear his name. The best way to avoid being a suspect is to be a victim. The only person who saw the Zodiac Killer's face in broad daylight was Cecilia Ann Shepard, and it was Brian Hartnell. After posting this theory, the Redditors were on it like a flash, making some dude 224 wish that he had looked too far into it. Aussie Duga asked the most logical question by posting, "How does Hartnell stab himself so many times in the center of his back?" Mute Mutiny followed up with, "The real problem with this theory is that Cecilia didn't die right away. She was alive and responsive when the cops arrived on the scene, and she was interviewed about what happened. Her story completely matches Brian's, and what reason would she have to lie about it anyway? Why cover for him?" Some dude 224's theory was debunked in record time on the subreddit by the concept that is lacking in the whole Zodiac case: logic. One question remains: why are there so many crazy theories on the Zodiac case? The Zodiac's actions and the media's obsession with his ruthless behavior fostered a cult-like following. The obsession with cracking an up until now uncrackable case enthralls all those trying to unmask the killer. When logic dries up, the illogical is bound to appear, and as we've shown, there is no lack of illogical, crazy theories on Reddit. But that's what keeps us enthralled with the Zodiac, a case that keeps on giving, even if it's certifiably crazy.